Hey everybody, how's it going? So there are these legends you may have heard about of a land that went under the sea in ancient times. The Greeks call it Atlantis, but in the biblical text it's called Tyre or Tyrus, and it's in the prophetic books of Isaiah right here, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, and probably many other places as well. And the biblical scholars believe the fall of Tyre occurred in the ancient past when the ancient king of Babylon conquered it. And there are these ruins under the sea off the coast of Tyre, Lebanon, that were written about centuries ago. So on the surface, it might seem like the texts describe a historical event that sank part of the current city of Tyre, Lebanon, under the sea. But in Jeremiah 25, it says Tyrus will no longer be inhabited after it falls, and people will seek it but not find it, down here in verse 20 and 21. And Ezekiel 26 says the same thing. It says, after it sinks into the sea, it will never be rebuilt, verse 14 right here. So that can't be about the city of Lebanon in ancient times, because that was rebuilt and it still exists today. And they already found the remains of old Tyre. So there are three options. Either the prophecy in Jeremiah and Ezekiel is false, or it hasn't happened yet, or Tyrus refers to another place. Personally, I think it's a combination of the second and third option, because we already know some of the other things Jeremiah mentioned did happen, including the invading army from Babylon. So it's not false. And in the writings of Matthew chapter 11, Jesus said Tyre will exist in the day of judgment, verse 24. And we know the day of judgment is a future event, because Jesus, well, for one thing, Jesus was talking about it in the future tense, but also because of the timeline Daniel gave us in correlation with Revelation, etc. And also because of 2 Peter, it indicates the day of judgment is a 1,000-year period, which may refer to the 1,000-year period that we're told occurs after the nuclear fire that it says will engulf the earth. So 2 Peter says the earth reserved for fire until, so this word right here, it's translated as against, but it actually means until. So the earth reserved for fire until the day of judgment, which would possibly be the 1,000 years that start right after that asteroid and the burning. So the texts say for sure that the day of wrath is the asteroid impact right here, and that starts the 1,000-year period. But we're not going to go into that. So the day of wrath and the day of judgment refer to roughly the same time period. They may not be exactly the same thing, but it's rough. It begins, both begin at the same exact time. Okay, so or it's roughly the same time. And the point here is that Jesus said Tyre will still exist at that time, in the end time, which the texts tell us is the end of the 6,000-year period that started in Mesopotamia. That's the end time. We're in it right now. It's like a 1,000-year period that we don't know exactly what the appointed time is of that asteroid impact that the Bible talks about, but we know that we're in the 1,000-year window right now. Okay, so if Tyre will exist until the end time, according to Jesus, and once it sinks into the sea, it will never be found again, according to Jeremiah 25 right here, and will never be rebuilt, according to Ezekiel 26 right here, then the invasion of Tyre, Lebanon by the king of Babylon was not the only prophesied event, because it was rebuilt after that, and the ruins off the coast were found. So the texts tell us Tyrus will never be found again, and it will still exist in the day of judgment. So the prophesied sinking into the sea has not happened yet. It refers to a place that exists now. It must be that. So, and in the text, Tyrus or Tyre is often associated with the fall of Babylon the Great, which we figured out is the pink area right here. And the texts also call this area spiritually Sodom and Egypt. So it's possible there's also a location that's symbolically called Tyrus, since this whole area is symbolically called Egypt and Sodom. So maybe there's another area that's symbolically called Tyrus. I don't know that for sure, but it makes sense. And the other thing is the land of Tyrus is not the same as Babylon the Great, because Jeremiah 25 says it's inhabited by seafaring men in verse 17. So in other words, it's part of an island community. And Jesus said the day of judgment will be more tolerable for Tyre than for Chorazin. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but it's right here in the Middle East. Right here where the red dot is. This is Chorazin, and Tyre is Sour right here in Lebanon. So Jesus said in the day of judgment, Tyre will be more tolerable than Chorazin, and they're not that far away from each other. So Ezekiel and Jeremiah said Tyre will be desolate. No one will dwell there. It will be covered by the waves, will never be rebuilt, and not even be found by those seeking it. So how could that be more tolerable than this place right here in Israel? It's just a stone's throw away almost. It's not very far away. Maybe not a stone's throw, but you know what I mean. The texts clearly say the destruction is caused by the waves. It will be covered by the sea, and we're told what causes the waves. The texts tell us it's the asteroid impact in the Sea of Babylon, which seems to be right here, the Atlantic Ocean. And because these ancient names, Babylon, Egypt, and Sodom, are used symbolically to describe this future area, then it makes sense that Tyrus also represents a future area, an island community. So over and over, the texts tell us the day of wrath affects the whole earth, not just the Middle East. And Jesus also confirms that he also confirms that the word Israel refers not just to the Middle East, but to the whole world. And that's in Matthew 10. Jesus tells the disciples to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel to spread the word in verse 6. But later in that same chapter, in verse 23, he says, they will not go over the cities of Israel until the Son of Man comes. So basically, it will take them more than 2,000 years to cover Israel. But why would it take them more than 2,000 years to spread the gospel in this tiny region right here? It wouldn't. That's not what Jesus meant. When he said Israel, he was referring to the whole world. He clarifies that in Mark 16. In verse 15, he says he wants them to go out into the whole world to preach the gospel. So go out into the whole world to preach the gospel. Go to the house of Israel to preach the gospel. And you won't complete that task until the Son of Man comes. So it's going to take you over 2,000 years to do that. So that's more confirmation right there that true Israel is the whole earth. Jesus said it himself. And we've talked about this before. The Homo sapiens, Jacob, the smooth one, crossed the Red Sea to populate the whole earth. Science actually confirms that legend. And all of humanity is the house of Israel. Yes, the exodus out of Africa first brought them into the southern Levant, but they spread out after that. And that's who we are, that everybody, all of humans on the planet. The 12 tribes encompass all humans. So if the texts tell us true Israel covers the whole earth, and Babylon the Great, also known as Egypt and Sodom, covers this pink area right here, then the question is, okay, where is end time Tyrus? There's got to be an end time Tyrus, you know what I mean? Since all of these other places have an end time location, then Tyrus probably does too. So the texts indicate Tyrus is a land of islands, and there are some in the Atlantic Ocean, right here, the Caribbean. And that makes sense since it seems we're told the asteroid will hit the Atlantic. However, it seems likely that the Atlantic island community would be completely wiped out by that. Um, I mean, I hate to say that. I'm just trying to understand what it's telling us here. It seems like if an asteroid were to impact the Atlantic Ocean, it would, and if it was as big as a mountain, like Daniel said, once it hits the Earth, it'll actually be a big mountain in the land after it hits. And we know asteroids burn up as they enter the atmosphere. So if that thing is still as big as a mountain after it hits, it is a huge asteroid. Um, and so I'm thinking if that's what's going to hit the Atlantic Ocean, then these islands right here, the Caribbean, it seems like they'd be completely wiped out. Jeremiah 25 says the islands will shake at the sound of the fall, and the princes of the sea will clothe themselves with trembling and sit upon the ground and be astonished at Tyrus and take up lamentation for Tyrus, saying, how Tyrus was destroyed, the renowned city that was strong in the sea and inhabited by seafaring men. Well, if they're sitting on the ground and they're sad and they're taking up lamentation, then they're still alive. So, um, it seems like, and then it goes on to say, the Lord says to Tyrus, I will bring up the deep upon you, great waters shall cover you. I will bring you down into the pit with the people of old time, and you won't be inhabited or even found by people who seek you in the future. So it sounds like one island community is trembling because the other island community sank into the sea. Okay, so let's just look at the oceans for a second. The East Pacific Ocean is really deep. You can see by the color. This is Google Earth. The shallow areas are over here, like in the Gulf of Mexico, that's more shallow. And the ocean off the East Coast right here, so you can see around Florida, this is shallow. And the ocean over here off the East Coast is more shallow than the ocean off the West Coast. So the West Coast of the US is not it. It's not where that island community is. It says it has to be a community that sunk under the sea before, because it said the island community will sink into the pit with the people of old time. So it sounds like it's a shallow area of ocean that used to be above water at some point in the ancient past. So it's possible that it refers like to the Caribbean right here. We've looked at the reasons the Atlantic Ocean seems to be the location of the future asteroid impact, and obviously the Caribbean would be affected by that. Um, and the Indian Ocean right here, it also has a few shallow areas of islands, but the largest shallow oceanic island region is from Malaysia and Indonesia in the Indian Ocean right here, all the way down to New Zealand. You can see this is all shallow water. And also all the way up through the China Sea, through here, and Japan, and then even up past Russia and into Alaska. You can see the ridge right here under the water. It goes all the way up to the Aleutian chain right here in Alaska and Russia, and it goes right past Japan. So you can see how shallow the Western Pacific is compared to the East Pacific over here. So to me, this looks like the largest shallow sea in the world. You can actually see the land under the water. It's all over here from the Indian Ocean to the Pacific. So this is probably more likely the location of the ancient land that went under the sea. Maybe they haven't found it yet because they were looking in the wrong place. Okay, I have to start part one right here. The link to part two is below.